obviously we've talked about the loss of the world of sport style and the British European style and in the United Kingdom. I mean, there's a lot of independent wrestling there, guys. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking. No, there's a lot of independent wrestling, but nobody can pretend that wrestling in England is as big as it was when it had network television and the stars of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even the early 80s.
Probably not a lot of grannies watching now, like they did when there was World of Sport.
Well, there's not a lot of anybody watching because there's no TV. There's a lot of independent shows. There's no TV. Wrestle Talk TV is a little talk about wrestling. It's on cable, but Germany was a hotbed. They had the tournaments where guys would go over there and live in a town for 6 weeks and wrestle every night in the tournaments. That doesn't take place anymore. Japan, yes, New Japan Wrestling is the second biggest promotion in the world, and everybody else is playing catch up in Japan, but neither New Japan nor All Japan are nearly as big as they were, and their stars aren't as mainstream as they were when they had network television, when they had Antonio Inoki and Giant Baba and their proteges in the 70s and 80s. There used to be Australia we talked about, and New Zealand used to be a hotbed. Steve Ricard just passed away, the New Zealand promoter at 85. That used to be a tremendous NWA territory where guys would go and do tours. Mexico is still hanging on, but unfortunately, once again, the WWF has had an effect there because the production values, the lucha promotions in Mexico can't really match that on television, and they have had to modify their style and do more hardcore shit or whatever the fuck and that's a cultural institution there in Mexico for lucha. So then the territories here in this country, there were so many, dozen places for guys to make good livings, and the top guys were making a fucking fortune. You figured out in Charlotte, Ole Anderson as the booker in Charlotte and in Atlanta, and a main event talent in Atlanta and the Carolinas in the late 70s was making the equivalent of $750,000 a year in today's money. I mean, there was wrestling all over Puerto Rico was hot at one point before all their some of those were self-inflicted wounds, but wrestling used to be a lot stronger all over the world than it is now. And I'm sorry for all the people to say, well, Cornette lives in the past. Well, I'm sorry. I'm speaking facts about things that took place in the past. And the fact is, and this is an undisputed fact, and nobody can fucking dispute it because it's an undisputed fact, wrestling drew multiple times more people to live events and drew multiple times more people to watch the programs on television and had multiple times more people making full-time livings in the wrestling business in any decade of the 20th century until about 1995. And then that's when things started heading downhill. And Vince had the Attitude Era, and then his headed downhill, and it's never come back. And if anybody wants to look at the records, this is, like I said, undisputable. It's not up for argument. This is just the facts. You may like the wrestling today better, but it was much more successful in years gone by. And that's just not a subject that's up for debate.
I think a lot of people, they don't seem to be thinking about success in terms of money, which is probably a mistake. They're kind of going sort of what would you call it? I guess a starving artist approach to the success of wrestling now. It's like, well, they're doing their art.
Yeah,
but are they making money on it?
They do more stuff now. Yeah, okay, they do more stuff and they get paid less for it. So is that's not progress. That's kind of backing up.
Yeah, that will not feed your family.
That's why maybe that's why I've been missing it, because I gauge the success and the popularity of professional wrestling on the size of the crowds that are going to see it, the numbers of people that are watching it on television, and the amount of people in the industry that are making good money at it. Maybe I should just not have done that and just said, oh, but the match last week, they did more moves, so that's clearly better than when fucking Thez and Leone drew, $100,000 in 1952, which would be somewhere around fucking $750,000 today. I don't fucking know.